morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm Brian Oliver, the Director of Admissions at SPIRE, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our weekly virtual admissions webinar. We've got a great panel of folks today to answer questions. If at any point during the talk you have any questions, feel free to use the chat bar, which you can find if you move your cursor on the screen. You'll see the little chat box on the bottom left-hand side. We look forward to answering any questions you may have. And without further ado, I turn it over to one of the school directors, Rich Odell.
Thanks, Brian. Good afternoon or morning, everyone. I'd like to start today by talking about some of the key components, the pillars, if you will, of SPIRE, the organization that is designed, developed now to really deliver to all ages, but principally today we're going to talk about programming for high school and post-grad students. And starting by talking about our 4 pillars, which form the foundation for all that we do at SPIRE. First piece of that is academics. We are a college preparatory accredited boarding and day school that also has the ability to take international students through a partnership that we have with Grand River Academy, a school that is about 8 miles up the road. We are a satellite campus of them for the first 3 years of our operation while we get our own formal accreditation. We have a second pillar, which is about personal skill development. We believe that all young people need to stand on 4 pillars to be successful in life. So academics is first, personal skill development, learning how to collaborate, learning how to communicate, learning how to be a team player, learning how to be a good listener. A variety of other skills all fit under that umbrella. Third leg is your major or your passion, sometimes both. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that from my colleague Ted Meekma in a couple of minutes. But that piece is what you would spend 4 hours a day doing, and you would spend 5 hours a day in your academic personal development. And the fourth leg of our pillar, which is your whole opportunities to look at different professions and get experience in them and get internships in them as well. So we think all 4 of those really form the foundation for somebody to be well prepared for life, but particularly well prepared if you choose to go on to higher education or you choose to come out of our program and potentially go right into the workforce in a high-tech position with an engineering background, or the opportunities that today are evolving very quickly that surround all of that. As I said, we are college preparatory, and so we do have a college counseling program that assists all of our students in 9th grade through 12th grade in that whole process of learning more about higher ed and what one wants to do, potentially going forward. We have a strong faculty that is already in place that will deliver our academic program and the other components that I referenced earlier. In addition to that, for children who are struggling a little bit, either with ADD, ADHD, or have a language-based learning difference, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, or dyslexia, we have a full team of people to assist young people who are needing some extra help in that area to show what they can also do academically. We have a brand new facility which is under construction right now and will be ready in early August. It is part of an existing building that has been completely built out specifically for us. Includes a science lab, an innovation lab, fabrication facility, has multiple classrooms, and then has a e-sport studio with VR and the ability to do a lot of the new technology design and development in that space. In addition to that, we're building new residence facilities on campus. These are facilities that we're having built right now. They're 2,300 square feet, each of them, and they have accommodations in 6 bedrooms for 2 students per room. Plus in that building, there is a house parent that has an apartment, and there's a common area for kids to get to know each other better, watch TV, play games, but also get to work and know more about their house parent who is there to help guide them in those hours when they're not engaged fully in the academic or the sport, personal development, or career components of what we do. All of this is going to be ready, and look forward to the arrival of students in the middle of August to get engaged in what is a very exciting program for us. We know that will be true for those who participate, and we look forward to having you with us. I'll turn it over to Ted to talk about sports and more. Ted?
Yeah, thanks, Rich. So if you were able to watch the video at the opening, you got a feel for the facilities at SPIRE. I've been in this business a long time, and I must say this is a very unique complex. The 175-acre campus has 750,000 square feet of indoor training and competition facilities that are really second to none. The track and field building has a fantastic indoor track with seating for about 5,000. The swimming complex has a full-size Olympic pool, as well as a recreation pool for therapy pools. That's where all the SPIRE Fuel, our nutritious cafeteria, is situated. The courts and turf field building has room for up to 6 basketball courts or 12 volleyball courts, as well as a full-size turf field that can serve soccer or lacrosse or field hockey. There's all kinds of support facilities, locker rooms, and there's a performance training center and a SPIRE Fit that is more of a member-based program for the community. The sports at SPIRE, the primary sports now from an academy perspective are basketball, swimming, track and field, and newly offered this summer and this fall is an esports program. And then there's a 5th discipline that we're calling mechatronic engineering. And that includes drone racing, robotic development, and other kind of emerging technology studies that if you go to our website, spireinstitute.org, you can learn a lot more about the camp and academy programs in that discipline. Each of the sports have these basic programs. There's the full-time academy that Rich was talking about that's both a high school and a post-grad program. Then we run training camps in the summer and certain holiday programs, holiday periods. Many of the sports have club training programs in the off season, and then sports like many of the same sports, but also sports like soccer and volleyball have leagues and different kinds of clinic work that are held evenings and weekends throughout the season. SPIRE Performance is a key component of everything we do on campus. That's where the long-term athletic development takes place, the physical conditioning, the mental skills training, the nutrition and hydration programming. And our guests today will talk more about those things in a few minutes. I'm proud of the coaching staff at SPIRE. All are very experienced, long-time college training and coaching experience. They know how to prepare students for the next stage in their career. They know how to train over a 9-month school year program, which is not always the easiest thing to do. Like I said, they all have college experience, except one track and field coach did not coach in college because he was busy pursuing his Olympic career. Tim Mack is our training and development director for track and field, and he was the 2004 Olympic gold medalist. So when he won his gold medal in his early 30s, he's been coaching privately since that time. And now we're happy to have him at SPIRE. Competition is a key component. We are proud of the way we combine our training and our competition in the right proportions. And we're good at gearing up our training programs to peak for competition periods and then cool back down and start the cycle over again. So there's more training done in the off season, obviously more preparation for competition done during the actual school seasons for each sport. We don't belong to the Ohio State Athletic Association or High School Athletic Association because we train the entire 9-month season. So we play independent schedules in all of our sports. And lastly, you may have already heard of SPIRE as a pretty amazing event hosting complex in track and field and swimming, and now we're building basketball tournament business as well. We've worked with Big Ten events, Big East events, Atlantic 10, lots of NCAA Division I and II, NAIA championships, Olympic qualifiers. So the ability for SPIRE to host major events like this, sometimes on the same weekend in different sports, is really unusual. Also, to be able to have our camp and our academy and our club and our league students train within a facility where these kind of events are also hosted is really quite unique in the industry. So that's what makes the place fun and exciting. That's why Rich and I are proud to be associated. The potential of SPIRE in the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years is pretty unlimited, and we're happy to be a part of it. I'll turn it back over to our admissions guru, Brian Oliver.
Good, thanks, Ted. Thanks, Rich. Yeah, my role at SPIRE is to help families navigate admission, figure out how and what programs would work for them. So I primarily handle the academic side, and my colleague Len Spacek works on the camp and training side. Today he's doing double duty as the camp admissions person and speaking about mental skills conditioning. But the admissions process for the academy is a pretty traditional independent school process. We look for an online application, collect the transcript and some letters of recommendation, and have some interviews both with me and with the sport director, so that we can all discuss the potential impact that SPIRE could have on a student athlete's future. We are accepting applications now for this coming school year, and are excited to be speaking to families in all 5 disciplines. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. It's boliver@spireinstitute.org, or any form on the webpage will also get word to me. Camp information can be found as well on the website, and Len would be answering any of those questions. But we're not going to let Len talk yet, because we're going to start with John Wallace to share a little bit about how he makes SPIRE different from a lot of our other people in this space. Thanks, John. Oh, John's still on mute.
Yeah, John, you're on mute, so just take that off. But let me introduce John and Len for a second, just so that people understand where the performance program fits within what we do at SPIRE. Like I said, I've been working in this business for many decades, and I started way back. I've spent 30 years at IMG Academy. In fact, before it even was IMG Academy, I was one of the founders of the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy. And then as we grew to different sports under the IMG banner, I was involved in starting the first golf academy, basketball academy, soccer academy. And so I realized early on that having great coaching that developed skill-specific training and competitive drilling and in each sport was obviously crucial. But if we didn't have the right athletic performance experts on the team who knew how to work with the coaches to design conditioning programs and strengthening programs and quickness and speed and agility programs that are kind of geared toward the level of each student, that would be a problem. That was a core component of what we did at IMG, and we obviously wanted to duplicate that same kind of program at SPIRE. Likewise, from a mental conditioning standpoint or mental skills training, it's an absolutely crucial part of competition, and it takes someone with training and expertise in that background to be able to relate to the students and get them comfortable competing and handling pressure and dealing with adversity. So at SPIRE, John and Len run those 2 respective departments, and we're proud to have them. And I'd like them to introduce themselves, a little bit about their background, and then talk about the kind of programming that they oversee within the academy. And then we'll just go back and forth amongst ourselves with some questions, unless we get anything more from the audience. So John, why don't you just give a little history on where you come from and kind of how you see your oversight of all the performance training at SPIRE.
Yeah, so my name is John Wallace. I'm the director of SPIRE Performance. Actually grew up in Ohio, about an hour and a half south of where SPIRE is at. Ended up playing college soccer for Cleveland State, where I completed my undergrad and master's degree in exercise science. And from there is where I really developed a passion as a collegiate athlete, looking at how I can pursue a career helping athletes reach their potential. Knowing I didn't have the ability to go on to play professional soccer, was looking to continue to stay in athletics, since it's had such a big impact on my my development. So From there, I moved on to be a graduate assistant strength coach with the Cleveland State Athletic Department for 2 years before I came out to SPIRE Institute, and got to work under Coach Brian McCall, who was our former director when I was out here. We were originally a Michael Johnson Performance Training Center, where I was able to grow and learn a lot in terms of, Ted, you sort of hit it earlier, long-term athletic development. And that's something I think that we really try to focus on for all our athletes. And it's unique in terms of, how we set up our programming for our camps and our academy, in that, we aren't necessarily a collegiate strength conditioning program because we have such a diverse background of athletes from different ages, physical capabilities, different sports. So, where we set up our training has to really hit each athlete for where they are individually. And I think that's something that we really do well, is to make sure that we address these things within each sport and within each different groups that we train.
Thank you. Let's leave that there for the moment. Bring in Len to talk a little bit about what he does, and then we'll come back with getting a little more specifically, how do we kind of design our day? What does the week look like? And then we'll get into a little bit of how we bring the academy performance training side of things into shorter term camp programs as well. So go ahead, Len.
Yeah, so my name's Len Spacek. I actually also grew up here in Ohio. Played football, basketball, and ran track in high school. Went to the University of Dayton, where I played some football at the University of Dayton. Graduated to get my master's in education at John Carroll University, and actually taught English for about 20 years. And in the last few years, I went back to school to get my counseling degree from John Carroll. And during that time, I found a passion for mental skills. And it was interesting, as Rich was talking about, the personal skill development, sports are a metaphor for life. So the things that we learn about how to navigate adversity and handle adversity in sports certainly transfer into the things that we navigate in life as well. One of the first things we do when athletes come into SPIRE is we talk about getting a vision. I remember the first page of my football playbook in high school that said, without vision, there is no victory. And if you don't have a vision, if you don't have a roadmap as to where you're going, how are you going to get there, right? So, when athletes come in, the first thing we do is we sit down and we write down our goals. We talk about what is our vision ultimately? What do we want to do? Do we want to become a Division I athlete? And then we put a roadmap together. What does that look like? What are we doing with our process goals? Meaning, what do we do every day to get better? And then we talk about what are our product goals? What are some specific things that we want to accomplish during the course of the season? So that's like our primary thing, is getting that vision, getting that focus, and then starting to lay the groundwork as to how we're going to get there. The other thing then is we put together what I call a tool belt. And there's 10 skills that we talk about over the course of the time that athletes are at SPIRE. Again, the first thing is the goal setting. The second thing is self-talk. What are we telling ourselves about ourselves from both a performance standpoint and from an individual standpoint? Super important as to the story that we're telling ourselves in our heads every day. Then we get into some visualization, where, Pele was famous for visualizing the whole game before it was ever played. So before he stepped on the field, a lot of times he had already won the game. So we talk about visualization and then putting those two components together, the self-talk and the visualization together, to get a pre-competition routine or a game-ready routine. We get into meditation and mindfulness. We talk about self-confidence, handling adversity, motivation. And then we get into different character traits, which also touches on what Rich was talking about at the beginning. We talk about accountability. What does that mean? We talk about what does it mean to be trustworthy? What does it mean to be a good leader? And we also talk about humility and the importance of having humility and what that looks like. So there's a lot of those things that we touch on as well. Then we get into a little bit of what I call the 4 quarters to greatness, which starts with, are you coachable? Can you take criticism? How do you handle criticism? How do you react to that? The second thing is, how do you practice? Are you just going through the motions, or is it all purposeful and meaningful? We also talk about then the game. What does your game look like? How are you prepared physically, mentally? your performance, how does that all come together? And then one of the most important things we talk about is giving back. At the end of the day, what you give back is just as important in your journey as anything else. So, we also talk about focusing on the process, because sometimes we get caught up so much in the end result that we forget to enjoy the process. And that's conversations I have with my 7 and 11-year-old son, and it's conversations I have with post-grad athletes. Don't get caught up in the winning and the losing, because if you do, you're going to lose sight of the present moment. And we talk about that. So, ultimately the goal is to give these kids a skill set. So at the end of the day, when they're done at SPIRE, they feel that they're not just good athletes, but they're good human beings that can navigate any kind of adversity that they face.
Yeah, great, Len. Thank you. So, John, I've got a question for you before maybe Rich throws something out for Len. One of the things that I've seen too much in sports training over the years is that the coach of the sport is over here in one silo, and then if there is a performance training center, the athlete's sent over there and they're training off on their own, and no one's talking between the two divisions. And I know at SPIRE we obviously stay away from that, but tell us a little bit how you work with, say, Thad Schultz, our swimming director, to assess an athlete when they come in and design a program that's customized for an athlete that both of you have input in.
Yeah, so I think what Len said really sort of hits the nail on the head up here too. I mean, we still have our goal setting, our vision that we have to have for our athletes up here. And with each athlete, regardless of sport, we're going to test and assess them based on what their specific needs are. So we sort of break it into a functional movement screen, which is almost like a diagnostics, looking at how well the athlete moves, their flexibility and mobility. We also work with our athletic trainers and our partnership with the clinic to make sure there's no sort of red flags in terms of, past injury risk or any things we may find out with that screen. And that's something that is included with all athletes. So that's not something you would think of as, your typical strength conditioning, your lifting, your speed training, but, something that's important for every single athlete. And then we also look at what we call our performance metrics. So this is almost looking at, I use the analogy of a vehicle, but what's the horsepower? How fast can it go? How high can an athlete jump? And each sport, there's metrics that are more important that will translate to better performance, in the water, on the track, on the court. So those are something that, we work with the sporting directors to find out what are the most important metrics that, we want to look to go after here in performance. So, while I'm a strength conditioning coach, it's generally what we're called for by trade. I'm not up here chasing weight room numbers or certain things. We're making sure that the training that we're doing is going to align with the goals, not only for the athlete, but also with the coach, that where they see them making their way best in terms of, that collegiate scholarship or playing at the next level. So it's something that, we try to include everyone to get involved with: the coach, from the sporting director, the athlete, ourselves. We also like to make sure, the parents are included with, what's going on up here from the programming. And that's a big thing, in our area in sports performances. A lot of times this is new for athletes. They're used to playing, our basketball guys are training on their dribbling, their shooting, their skills all the time, but this may be a new facet of training for them. And, quite frankly, a lot of times lifting weights and doing performance training is not something that's as enjoyable as, your sports. So this is something that, really getting that buy-in for the athletes to understand, what we're doing up here is to make you a better athlete. So that's a big thing, is making sure that, there is communication. We're not staying in our silos. And I mean, we've been really fortunate to have Coach Thad from swimming that's been working at a Division I level from high end, and he's very open to dry land training, as they call it, for swimmers up here. Coach Powell in track and field has been coaching at University of Pennsylvania for probably as long as I've been living, and is an unbelievable track coach. And that's really one thing that's nice, is we're able to align our training based on their training cycle. So it's not a matter of, I'm building up the weight room training based on what I think it should work. We're working with the track coaches and the swim coaches, and that's, unique, that what it may be for one track athlete. Say we have a high jumper, their training program may be completely different than if we have a mid-distance runner. Same thing with our basketball. We have high school and post-grad academy. So we could have a freshman, sophomore basketball player that, still physically developing versus a post-grad athlete that, come in here and may have some training background. So that's another unique thing is, while we still train our athletes in a team environment, especially from the basketball standpoint, each athlete's going to have individual variations in their programs to make sure that we're hitting where they're at in their, technical abilities, their physical abilities, and what we see from the testing side that's going to make them, not just a better athlete in terms of up here as a weightlifter, but what's going to make them a better athlete in their sport.
So you're really customizing, and not just for an athlete in a sport, but not just the difference between the sports themselves, but actually the age and ability level of the athlete in each sport. It's customized even further down to that level.
Yeah, and what you said earlier, the long-term athletic development, I mean, that's something that's been out there now for a good 12, 14, 15 years, and it's looking at hitting each athlete during their, what they call peak windows of development. And during certain times, athletes have the ability to adapt to certain things, speed, strength, increase in muscular mass more. So, we have the unique ability to train athletes that aren't just, college athletes age 19 to 22, 23. We have a very diverse age of athletes that are going through, still physical development, and also a lot of times are very unskilled in terms of weightlifting. So, we've worked with, I think last Olympics, we had 12 swimmers that trained at SPIRE that went on to swim in the Olympics. And even within that, I mean, we have Olympic caliber swimmers that may have very little what we call training age in the weight room. So they may have, be Olympic caliber in their sport, but in terms of weightlifting, this may be new to them. So that's also something that we need to make sure we address properly, so that, while we want to increase everyone's strength, how we do that may be, different based on what we see during our, functional movement screen. If an athlete has some injury risk, what is their skill set? So that's a big thing that we look at from our development too, from the performance side, is while we want to make them more athletic, we also want to make sure we increase their skill for performance training, because that allows me to have essentially more tools in my toolbox to be able to use for performance training. So if we get our athletes more technical at lifting, moving better, not only are they going to improve more during their time here, but we also, we look at long-term athletic development. And if we can have our athletes progress even further in college, we want to see those gains continue outside of SPIRE as well.
Yep.
So Len, a question for you has to do with, as we get students coming into SPIRE this fall, it's typical that kids will come from parts of the country or around the world where they were an exemplary athlete. They had achieved at a high level. Maybe they were the top on their team or in the pool. And they come to SPIRE, where there are multiple other students who have come from other areas who also feel that same way. And they come together and they have to recognize that maybe they're not as good as they were when they were home, based on the level of competition and competency that they see when they come to the SPIRE environment. So I'm curious how you would look at initially helping somebody manage their way through that realization to get themselves to the right place for their ultimate success, both in their sport, but also in life.
It's a great question. And I think, the focus of SPIRE is that you become the best version of yourself. So I think what I explain to kids when they come in is that everybody is at a different starting point. You're going to have, just like John was talking about, kids that have different strengths and weaknesses in the weight room and training. They're going to come in at different levels as well. So the message always is, our vision from the beginning of the time that you're at SPIRE until you leave is that you become the best version of yourself. And one of the things that we talk about is to not find yourself comparing yourself to other athletes. What is your vision? What are your goals? How are you going to accomplish that? How are you going to get there? And if you get caught up in spending all your time and energy worrying about what everybody else is, where everyone else is at and what everybody else is doing, you're going to find yourself, struggling. So I guess the best way to answer that question is when athletes come in, we talk about what's your vision? How are we going to get there? What skills can we give you to get to that place? And not focus so much on what everybody else is doing, but really focus on becoming the very best version of who you are, not just as an athlete, but academically, as a human being. And just real quick, I'll say this, one of the things we talk about when athletes come in is, what is your why? Why are you here? What's your purpose? And for a lot of people, that's different. Those are different answers. So, that's the other thing that we work toward is your purpose. Why are you here? What's your purpose? How are we going to get there? So that would be my approach to helping those athletes.
Good. Thank you. I'm going to add one other thing that we haven't talked about, and we might have some other questions from others on the panel or from some of you who are listening and watching today. That has to do with the COVID-19 virus and what are our preparations, both for kids who are coming to us and here right now in the summer programming that we're doing, but also on a bigger scale coming the fall. State of Ohio is allowed to have boarding students now for camp and for fall programming. And so our place is a pretty robust one in terms of the plan that we have in place. We use one central entry point to our facility. Everybody checks in, has their temperature taken, also has to sign off to make sure that they aren't carrying any of the symptoms that we've all seen coming out of the CDC. And then in terms of throughout the day, students here are checked with their temperature 3 times a day. We have easily achieved social distancing, as Ted suggested, when you have 775,000 square feet under roof. I have not done the math to figure out how many people we could actually accommodate with 6-foot discretion and distancing, but I suspect it's a lot more than any other place probably in the country could do right now under 3 roofs. In addition to that, for dining purposes, all of our facilities are sanitized before we serve a meal and sanitized after. We are setting it up so that there is definitely 6 feet between students, even though they may want to be closer together. We will discourage that aggressively. We will also make sure that all of our bathroom facilities are cleaned every 4 hours and sanitized to ensure that. We've also set up a center within our facilities so that if there is somebody that we feel is demonstrating some of those indicators, say they might have the 19 or they might be starting to see signs of that, an isolation area that we have set up and that we do partner with Cleveland Clinic to help us in all this. There is, if there is an immediate need, there is a medical center and hospital facility close by that we can get students to, or that we can hold that student until a family member comes to pick them up. This would be true not just for camp programs, but also for the academic year as that starts to get underway. Ted, I'll flip it back to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about post-grad program?
Yeah, we offer post-grad academy training programs in all of our sports. And that's for a student who is looking for a gap year between high school and college. And could be for a lot of different reasons. Could be they want to work on their particular sport. They maybe need to mature physically or emotionally or socially, or there's some educational things that need to be shorn up before they can go on to the next level. Or quite frankly, they got a scholarship offer that wasn't as from the kind of school they were looking for. And so more and more people these days are realizing that the chance to go someplace into a program for a year where they can hopefully take up to 2 different college courses for credit that would be transferable to a college institution, and not at the same time, you would not lose any college eligibility. You wouldn't have to be redshirted when you got to school. That's becoming more and more popular. And especially in this day and age when the school years were interrupted at the end, and there's more kids who are a little bit uncertain as to what their direct to college path looks like. We've had a lot more interest from students wanting to get engaged in a post-grad year at SPIRE. And so I think we're a great facility for that. We understand the business side of the post-grad athlete and what they're there for and what they're looking to do. We're not just trying to develop post-grad teams that win everything. That's competition is great. Love to perform well, but our real goal is to get that student ready for the next phase of their athletic and academic career path. So I think SPIRE is a place that you should look at if you're interested in that kind of program.
Thanks. A question we often hear at this point in our presentations has to do with what does a day look like at SPIRE? And so for us, a day, as I outlined a little bit initially in today's program, is a 5-hour academic day, which would be a full array of courses taught in a format that is collaborative and project-based and cross-curricular. So this is helping students utilize the knowledge that they're acquiring and see how that applies in a real life situation rather than just learning that information so they can do well on a test. We want them to actually have the practical experience with that. So that would encompass 5 hours of the day. 4 hours a day in that major field is also how they would likely spend their afternoons at this point, or their mornings. We are not sure which part of the day we're going to use for academics and which part for sport right now. But that would be an important, obviously, balance to their day, and obviously probably a piece they will look forward to a little bit more than just the academic side of their day. In the evening, there would be time supervised study hall to make sure that students are staying on course with their workload, not falling behind. When our teams travel, we make sure that the students' work is all set out and outlined ahead of time so that we can maintain the expectations while they're away on a tournament or going to a college visit or other things of that sort. We want them to be not missing any of their work and recognizing the value of that. In between those two components or three components of their day is time to eat in our fuel facility, where we have all of our food is made in-house from the start to the baking at the end of the day. And we believe that nutrition is an integral part of the development of every athlete, every student that comes through SPIRE, and we want to help them understand better how they should manage their own nutritional needs. And so we have a nutritionist that helps out in that arena. Looks like there's a couple questions out there, Brian?
Not much yet in the chat,
No,
but
okay.
one of the things that does come up a lot is this, the concept of what happens after SPIRE and how do we help people through the college placement and or the college recruitment process. So if you guys could speak to that, that would be helpful.
I can speak to it from the academic side, and we can address the athletic side as well, but probably in some of our other sessions where we have the specific sport coach, they might have a better answer to that part, or Ted will. On the academic side, preparation starts as a freshman. The freshman year has opportunities with the college counseling folks to talk about what are your areas of interest. So where might that career concern or opportunity start to align for you? What are the things you're thinking about aside from being better at your sport? Those are general sessions that are group oriented, but then a little bit of one-on-one time to talk through what you might need to be doing academically in order to ensure preparation for the college program that would fit with that interest. In your sophomore year, it's getting a little bit more specific about what might be good summer or vacation experiences you could have that would be giving you some hands-on experience in those arenas. And also beginning to focus on how important that junior year is going to be with your academics, because it's really that junior component of the 4 years that a college is going to look at, given that your application is in before you are halfway through your senior year. When you're in that junior year, it's definitely the opportunity to sort through and figure out which of the universities or colleges that you're most suited for and most interested in. Parts of the country, affordability, what are the programs, what's the structure of the programs, all those kinds of things need to be part of it, in addition to developing good writing skills for your personal statement that you'll need to prepare in conjunction with each of those applications. And then in the middle of the junior year, really focusing on having visited and narrowed your list down to start and look at what the requirements are going to be for application so that you can make sure that you've met all of those by the end of your junior year. And as we move into then the summer between junior and senior, if you're interested in going early decision with the university, getting the application and your letters of recommendation and your transcript and your personal statement all in place so that that packet can go in at the earliest date in September or August, depending on their acceptance. And then you hopefully will hear back positively that you've been offered admissions to that institution. For those who don't choose early admission, that process continues into the September window of their senior year, but with the idea that most universities want you to have your application in that September to November window so that they can make their decisions on their general admissions program, and you can make your decision about where you want to go. That would be our process. Full engagement by the faculty with the college people in this process, full engagement by the coaching staff also in helping narrow that list of institutions you might be looking at, depending on where you want to have the sport component play in your college experience. I'll turn it back to Ted or Len or John if you have things you want to add about the college component.
Well, all of our coaches have had a lot of experience in helping athletes find the right college experience with the right team, with the right coach, with the right program. And so they're very engaged in that process with our staff that coordinates that with the students and with the families and with the faculty. So I'm very comfortable that that part is well in hand. We've been placing kids in different levels of college programs for a long time, and everybody on our staff realizes that that's a huge component of what we're trying to accomplish here. So I've got one last point I want to bring up and let John and Len both weigh in. One of the keys to being a top athlete and succeeding in competition is being able to handle pressure and deal with adversity. And that applies to school, that applies to life and work. It's not just athletic. But at SPIRE, I think we've got a good approach toward helping our athletes get comfortable under the pressures of competing. And we try to build our practice sessions in a way that there's simulated competitive elements to it, to where they get comfortable. They get used to dealing with pressures, but and overcoming those. And so when they then get out into the competitive arena outside, they see what's coming, they know how to deal with it. But both physically and mentally, it's not just being able to know what to do on the floor or in the pool or on the track. It's how does your mind and body react to those kind of situations. So we spent a lot of time working on that, and I thought you guys might each want to jump in for a minute on how you help athletes get prepared for, the challenges they're going to face every time they step on the athletic field.
You want to go first, John, or me?
You can go first. I feel like it's more up your alley.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is, we talk about a couple things. What is your narrative? What are you telling yourself? With my counseling background, one of the biggest kinds of approaches I like to talk about is narrative therapy. It's like, what's your vision and what is the story that you tell yourself? Where do you see yourself going? And I think that applies not just to sports, but to life. So a lot of the self-talk phrases we have that, kids start to have as part of their skill set is, one, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? And I think as you go through life, the more you're willing to have difficult conversations, the more you're willing to put yourself into competition scenarios where you feel uncomfortable, then you get more used to that and you're able to then perform at a higher level. So the more you subject yourself to that adversity and those challenges, the more you're able to handle those challenges. And again, I'll go back to my high school basketball coach who said, either you control your emotions or your emotions control you. So I think what we do with athletes is try to give them, again, that skill set, all those tools that when they have to handle adversity, what is their go-to statement? What are they telling themselves about themselves? What are they telling themselves about the situation? And, how are they rising to the occasion? One of our, the mantra that I come up with is, I'm knowledgeable, I'm prepared, I'll rise to the occasion. And the hope is that when athletes leave, they have that same mantra, right? I'm prepared. I have done the work. I will rise to the occasion. And I think all of those things transcend sports and go into everything that we do in our everyday lives.
Yeah, and I like what you said on the be uncomfortable being uncomfortable. This is something I tell the athletes all the time in our area up here. It's something that I really don't like to build our performance training in terms of trying to build toughness through our lifting, but it's one of the things that me and Len talk all the time about, how can we get buy-in, how can we get effort? And, the three things athletes can control every day is attitude, concentration, and effort. And my area, the effort piece is a really big component. And I think a lot of our athletes who come up here, have an understanding of where they think their ceiling is at in terms of, I gave 100% today and, that's all I got, where a lot of what I have to do is get them to realize that while you're working hard, your ceiling's actually up here, and it's going to take us a while for you to get comfortable, working at that ceiling. What your comfort level is thinking as 100% right now is actually, there's still 10, 20% left. And that's the difference between really seeing the gains and seeing them quicker and more substantial throughout the process, is getting these athletes to be able to understand that they, may have more left in the tank. So it's less of, us really trying to create toughness in terms of, building workouts that are just grueling and physically fatiguing. Don't get me wrong, they will definitely be tough workouts, but, we're trying to get the athletes to understand. And again, my area, that's performance, where it's, not your sport. I think this really helps them understand that, putting in the effort, the intensity in something that isn't even per se for their sport really helps translate and carry over onto the field. And, as an athlete myself, I understand the importance of what it's like. I've played against some of the top teams in the nation in soccer and other sports growing up. And, it's sometimes when you're nervous, it's hard. It's crazy how, your touch on the ball goes away when you're afraid and you're nervous and you hear 10,000 fans in the background. So this is something that, while I don't directly deal with the sporting side of things, we can each help with our department. And, sort of how you talked about earlier, Ted, with the silos, not one single department here, even underneath performance, but even each sporting directors is, separated. We're all inclusive in that. So that's something that, I really enjoy having that, from Len, that if I see an athlete that I think is struggling, I can, talk with him and he can even bring that up. And that could be something that, could bring out more from their effort level. And it's not something that I can give that athlete, but, something that Len can help that athlete realize that there's something left on the table that they can perform with. So, it's something that I really enjoy seeing. And again, at the end of the year, when you see a completely different athlete, not just physically, but, mentally, emotionally, how they carry themselves, that's something that really helps us, I think, make each athlete be the best version of themselves.
Real quick, first of all, I have the utmost respect for John. I love having conversations with him, and, how, just listening to him talk to athletes as far as, hey, like, if we're working on some part of your game, what do we need? Is it more important that we increase your vertical, or do we need 10 more pounds of muscle? So like those little things just matter so much. And I think what he just touched on that I appreciate is the idea of being able to control the controllables, right? In life, there are certain things that we can't control, but what we can control, like he said, are things like your attitude and your effort and all those things. So I think that's one of the most important messages we can give athletes as they go through SPIRE is control what you can control. There's certain things you cannot control, but what you can control is what you bring to the table every day as a human being, as an athlete. So I love the conversations I have with John, because he, always opens my eyes to, his approach to how he trains athletes. And so I appreciate that relationship a lot. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been impressed by the way you send an athlete out that knows that he or she are physically fit and in the best condition possible. That's one element that they don't have to worry about when things get tough. They know they've already got that. And from your standpoint, Len, if they know how to kind of clear their mind and take a deep breath and lower the heart rate a little bit and get into a routine that they're comfortable with, that you've prepared them for. Again, it's another way that they can deal with pressure. And a lot of times they'll see athletes they're competing against don't have those same kind of skills. They're not as fit. They're not as mentally strong. They've got tells and little elements that you can see that they're starting to break down. And when you know that you can rise above that, recognize the fact that you're making an impact on the pressure the other athlete is feeling. Those are the things we work on all the time. And that's what, I've always felt that when we send our athletes out to competition and they realize that, man, practice last week was just about as tough as this. I'm ready. I know what to do when things get tight. And there's not a lot of environments where you can do that as well as you can within an academy setting like this. But you can't do it without experts, and we're happy that we've got two great ones on our staff.
And with that, we'd like to invite all of you to come visit us on site. We are open for business, and we pretty much there every day of the week. So anytime you wish, you can set up an appointment to see Len and do a tour, or to talk to Brian on the phone. And understand that what SPIRE is intending to do with all that we've shared today is to create a platform for your child or children to achieve beyond their own personal expectations on a daily basis, but also as they look forward to the rest of their life by bringing together these different legs or elements that we call pillars to ensure that they've got a place to go and to know that they can do well, even in the worst of times, but for sure in the best of times. So we thank you all for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at SPIRE. Have a good day. Be well.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Hey, well, everyone.